Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
Alright, so here's the deal. I never thought I'd be the guy complaining about a homeowners association, but here I am, living what feels like a bad sitcom plot. Let me tell you how my wife and I ended up in this mess. A few years back we decided to make this big move for our careers. You know how it goes. New job, new state, new everything. We were pretty pumped about it, to be honest. I mean, who doesn't love a fresh start, right? Anyway, while we were getting settled, my father-in-law, bless his heart, offered to let us rent his vacation condo in the area. Talk about convenient, right? So we move in, and let me tell you, this place was sweet. Like, seriously sweet. We're talking ocean views, a balcony perfect for morning coffee, the whole 9 yards. My wife and I, we fell head over heels for this place. It was like living in a permanent vacation spot. One day, we casually mentioned to her dad how much we loved it. And get this, he offers to sell it to us, not just sell it, but at a price that wouldn't require us to sell our kidneys on the black market. I'm talking way below market value. At first, I thought he was joking, but nope, he was dead serious. Looking back, I'm pretty sure he had his own motives. I mean, he probably figured that as his daughter's place, he'd still get to come down every summer and hang out for weeks on end. But hey, who was I to look a gift horse in the mouth? We were about to become homeowners, or condo owners, whatever. Do you know how rare that is for millennials these days? It's like finding a unicorn riding a dinosaur. Now I'll admit we did have one tiny reservation. The condo was part of a homeowners association. You know, one of those HOAs you hear horror stories about. But her dad had never had any issues with them, and they'd pretty much ignored us the whole time we'd been renting. So we figured, how bad could it be? Oh, sweet summer child that I was. The second, and I mean the literal second, we signed those papers and became owners. It was like we'd stepped into the twilight zone. The HOA, which had been perfectly content to pretend we didn't exist before, suddenly developed what I can only describe as a burning, passionate hatred for us. I swear we can't do anything without it becoming a violation. We put out a welcome mat, you know, like normal friendly people do. Bam, citation for excessive clutter. I didn't realize a 2 by 3 foot piece of fabric qualified as clutter, but apparently in HOA land it does. Then there was the great deck furniture debacle of 23. We bought this nice patio set, nothing fancy, just a table and some chairs. Wrong move, buddy. Turns out our furniture was the wrong color. I didn't realize there was an approved color palette for outdoor furniture, but live and learn, I guess. And don't even get me started on having friends over. Every time we have people around, we get slapped with a noise complaint. I'm not talking wild parties here. I mean a couple of friends over for dinner and board games. Apparently, in this building, laughter is a noise violation. Who knew? But the cherry on top of this ridiculous sundae, they tried to pin a water leak on us. Yeah, you heard that right. One day, out of the blue, we get this notice saying that the apartment below us was reporting water coming from the ceiling. Now, I'm no plumber, but I'm pretty sure I'd notice if our floor was wet enough to be leaking through to the apartment below. We checked. Bone dry. The kicker, less than a week later, that same apartment was rented out to someone else. Miraculously, the leak had disappeared. But did we get an apology? No, instead we got threats of fines and lawsuits. Because apparently, that's how adults communicate in HOA world. Now, I should probably mention that my wife and I are in our 30s. We're not exactly spring chickens, but in this building, we might as well be teenagers. Everyone else here is retired. I'm talking full-on early bird special, watching Wheel of Fortune every night retired. And that's when it hit me. They're trying to force us out. They want this to be an all-boomer building, and we're messing up their vibe. It's the only explanation I can come up with for why they were fine with us renting from my father-in-law, who's 70 by the way, but can't stand us as owners. Oh, and let's not forget the cherry on top of this whole mess. The HOA president, this guy who looks like he stepped out of a 1950s sitcom, keeps referring to my wife as Chinese. Now, my wife is from the Philippines, and she's always been clear about that. But this guy, nope. In his mind, all Asians are apparently Chinese. I know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the worst form of racism out there. But it's still clearly intentional, and it's just another way they're trying to make us feel unwelcome. It's like they're playing this game of, how can we be jerks without actually breaking any laws? The worst part is, we love this condo. We love the area. We were so excited about making this our home, about building a life here. But now it feels like we're constantly walking on eggshells in our own home. We can't relax, can't enjoy ourselves, because we're always waiting for the next ridiculous violation to be thrown our way. And you know what really gets me? We're good neighbors. We're quiet. We keep the place clean. We're friendly. Or at least we try to be, despite the constant hostility. We're not the stereotypical young people they seem to think we are. But none of that matters to the HOA. In their eyes, we're the enemy, and they're determined to make our lives miserable until we give up and leave. Some days I wonder if we should just cut our losses and sell the place. But then I think about how much we love it here, how hard we work to get this place, and I get angry all over again. Why should we have to leave just because a bunch of retirees can't handle having younger neighbors? So here we are, stuck in this ridiculous situation, trying to figure out how to coexist with people who seem determined to hate us. Everything is our fault, apparently. Put out a welcome mat, our fault. Have friends over, our fault. Exist as people under 60, definitely our fault. I don't know how this is going to end. Maybe we'll find a way to make peace with the HOA. Maybe they'll eventually realize we're not the demons they think we are. Or maybe we'll end up in some sort of condo Cold War for the next few decades. At this point, your guess is as good as mine. All I know is, if I ever hear anyone say, "How bad could an HOA really be?" again, I'm going to have a lot of stories to tell them. And maybe, just maybe, I'll invest in some gray hair dye. Who knows, it might be our only chance at fitting in around here. The Civil Rights Department, CRD, previously known as the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, DFEH, provides a complaint form on their website for individuals who believe they have experienced discrimination, including from Homeowners Associations, HOAs. This form can be used to report instances where HOAs are alleged to have selectively harassed or discriminated against members based on protected characteristics such as age, race, disability, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, or other factors covered by California's Fair Housing Laws 1-3. The complaint process allows individuals to formally report discriminatory practices in housing, including those perpetrated by HOAs. Once filed, the CRD evaluates the complaint to determine if it falls within their jurisdiction. If accepted, the department may investigate the allegations, attempt mediation between parties, or potentially pursue legal action if evidence supports a reasonable cause determination 1-2. This process serves as an important mechanism for enforcing civil rights laws and addressing discriminatory practices in housing communities, ensuring that HOAs comply with fair housing regulations and treat all members equitably. What exactly is the discrimination? If you want to use that form, start and gather picture evidence that everyone else has a doormat, that everyone else has similar deck furniture colors to yours. If there's actually a rule about furniture neutrality and everyone else has neutral colors, you aren't going to go far with a discrimination complaint. We got noise complaints from the neighbors who hate us, but they stop when we quickly reciprocated. We aren't in an HOA. Where I live, people call the police about noise. And yes, there's lots of deniable racism, but going to federal court and attempting to redress it legally is quite difficult and time-consuming. Better to be active in your actual HOA. Vote the effers out, one by one. Federal, yes. But I can personally attest that states have their own laws regarding discrimination, and HOAs are a prime target. I once saw an HOA get sued because they posted a sign prohibiting children from playing in the street. The sign was allegedly ageist because it was only barring children from playing and not anyone else. I never thought I'd be caught up in such a mess when I moved into this condo community last year. It was supposed to be a peaceful place to settle down, but boy, was I wrong. Let me tell you about the absolute chaos that's been unfolding here since February. So, we got this new HOA board, right? A bunch of newbies who hadn't even lived here for a year. They somehow got appointed and took over, and let me tell you, they've been nothing but trouble from day one. It's like they're on a mission to destroy everything good about this place residents have called home for 42 years. At first, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just needed some time to adjust, But nope, they went full steam ahead with their crazy ideas. It started small, but before we knew it, they were tearing apart the very fabric of our community. One of the first things they did was start enforcing rules like they were on some power trip. But here's the kicker. They only seemed to target certain owners. It was like they had a personal vendetta against some folks. I saw my neighbor, old Mrs. Johnson, get a warning for having a potted plant on her porch. Meanwhile, the board president's buddy had a whole jungle growing on his balcony, and not a peep from them. Then came the towing incident. I'll never forget waking up one morning to find half the parking lot empty. They'd towed a bunch of cars overnight, giving people less than a day's notice. Can you believe that? People were scrambling, trying to figure out where their cars had gone. It was chaos, but that was just the beginning. They started coming up with all these new rules and regulations that made no sense. Half of them went against our existing CCRs and bylaws, not to mention state laws. It's like they didn't even bother to read the existing documents before making up their own rules. And don't get me started on the finances. These yahoos drained our reserve account faster than you can say mismanagement. They decided to do all this maintenance work that should have been planned out over years, not months. Now we're broke, and the place looks worse than ever. The pool fiasco was the last straw for a lot of us. They hired some fly-by-night company to do work on our pool. 2 days later, the pool was completely destroyed. I mean, it looked like a bomb went off in there. Now it's closed for this year, probably next year too, and we're likely headed to court over it. Great job, guys. But the worst part, the bullying. I've seen board members having full-on temper tantrums in the parking lot, screaming at owners and vendors alike. It's embarrassing, really. And they can't seem to keep any vendors around. They've fired every single one they've hired, and not a single job has been completed. Oh, and here's a real kicker. They've started denying repairs to common property, claiming it's not the HOA's responsibility. They're telling owners to fix things themselves. Last week, my upstairs neighbor had a leak coming from the roof, and the board told her to climb up there and fix it herself. Can you imagine? It's been a nightmare, honestly. 5 months of constant stress and drama. We're all at our wits' end. Some of us started talking about organizing a meeting to discuss these issues, try to come up with a plan to present to the board. But somehow they got wind of it. Next thing we know, they're throwing this big movie night. Bought a projector, speakers, even got some recreational equipment and refreshments. I guess they thought they could win us over with popcorn and a cheesy movie. Well, let me tell you how that went down. 6 people showed up. 6, and 4 of them were board members themselves. The other 2, a former board member and their friend. It was almost funny if it wasn't so sad. The rest of us, we stayed home, sent a clear message that we're not buying what they're selling. I hope they got the hint, but knowing them, they probably didn't. Instead of taking a step back and reconsidering their approach, they knee-jerked and scheduled a community meeting for next week. I'm not holding my breath for any real change, but who knows? I've been here less than a year and I'm already thinking about moving. It's a shame, really. This used to be such a nice place to live. Now it feels like we're living under the rule of some petty dictators who don't know the first thing about running an HOA. I'm hoping that the community meeting might be a turning point. Maybe if enough of us show up and voice our concerns, they'll finally listen. But part of me worries it'll just be another opportunity for them to bulldoze over us, with more ridiculous rules and decisions. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head down and stay out of their crosshairs. I've seen what happens to people who speak up, and it's not pretty. But I can't help feeling like something's got to give soon. This can't go on forever, right? I never thought I'd say this, but I actually miss our old, boring HOA board. At least they knew how to keep the lights on and the grass cut without starting a civil war. These new folks, they're like a tornado that's ripped through our community, leaving nothing but chaos in their wake. So here we are, stuck in this mess, wondering how long it'll take before something finally changes. Will the movie night flop be the wake-up call they need? Will the community meeting actually lead to some positive changes? Or are we in for more months of this insanity? I guess only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, I'll never take a quiet, well-run HOA for granted again. Who knew that a bunch of newbies with a little bit of power could cause so much havoc? It's been a wild ride, and something tells me we're not at the end of it yet. Here's hoping for a miracle, or at least a board that knows how to read a budget and follow basic laws. Is that really too much to ask? It shouldn't have to be like that, though. It's horse crap. A small little get-together of chicken crap tyrants shouldn't be able to impose their garbage ideas on the property and livelihoods of other people just because those other people don't want to play their stupid games. People already deal with the government breathing down their necks. They shouldn't have to put up with some holier-than-thou suck-up-a-holes and their fake rules. What did they do exactly? The projector equipment was probably within their spend limit. It takes time to build an audience for these kind of events. Calling a meeting when you hear people are upset is exactly what a good board does. They are saying that they want to hear what issues owners are having. You aren't presenting any dire events. I'm at my wit's end, and it's all because of our useless Homeowners Association and their ridiculous rules that seem designed to drive me crazy. It all started 17 days ago when our HVAC unit broke down, leaving us sweltering in our own home with temperatures reaching a scorching 90 degrees during the day and a sticky 85 degrees indoors at night. You'd think that would be enough justification for us to get it replaced ASAP. But nope, not according to our lovely HOA. We hired a reputable contractor who provided all the necessary documents, including proof of insurance, COI, for themselves and the crane company they'd be working with. You know, just in case anyone got hurt while installing our new unit or damaged any neighboring properties. But after countless emails and phone calls, leaving voicemails that went unanswered, we still haven't gotten any response from property management giving us the green light to proceed with the replacement. Last night was my breaking point. Our two poor dogs were panting so hard they looked like they were about to collapse from heat exhaustion right before our eyes. So I wrote an email, more like a desperate plea, begging property management to approve our request already. You can imagine my shock when, instead of getting some kind of sympathy or understanding from President Bob, or whatever his name is, he replied by telling me that our application was incomplete. According to him, we didn't follow procedure or provide all necessary documents. Newsflash, we did, but apparently that wasn't good enough. To add insult to injury, Bob went on about how we should have read our CC&Rs, community covenants and restrictions, which, surprise, we never received. Who does that? Keeps crucial documents from homeowners? Do they really expect us all just to magically guess what's what? Now we're stuck waiting even longer while our poor contractor scrambles around gathering additional paperwork, permits this and that, bidding sheets galore. Can you believe it? We pay an astronomical $820 per month in HOA fees for this level of incompetence. Meanwhile, back here at ground zero, aka my sweltering living room filled with wilting plants and heat-stressed pets, life goes on. Oh wait, no it doesn't. At least not until someone decides it's okay for us humans, and animals, living here to breathe again in peace. For instance, last week when temps reached new record highs and electricity consumption skyrocketed, and bills along with it, it got me thinking about the amount of control the HOA has over us. It's insane. They regulate every tiny aspect of our lives here, from the color of our front doors to the kind of flowers we can plant in our yards. And now they're essentially controlling our ability to stay cool in our own home. One day, I went outside to cool off, as if the outdoor 90 degrees were any better, and I ran into my neighbor, Sarah. She's been through the HOA ringer herself and had a few horror stories to share. Apparently, she once got fined for having her trash cans out a few hours too early. Can you believe that? She tried to fight it, but the HOA wouldn't budge. They're like this unyielding monolith, completely indifferent to the real lives and struggles of the people living here. We chatted for a while, mostly commiserating over the HOA's nonsense. It was kind of comforting to know I wasn't alone in this mess. Sarah suggested banding together with other neighbors to form some kind of resistance. I mean, it sounded a bit dramatic, but desperate times call for desperate measures, right? That night, back in my oven of a house, I started drafting a plan. First, I would gather more neighbors who were fed up with the HOA. Then maybe we could present a united front and demand some changes. I posted a message on our community's online forum outlining our HVAC nightmare and asking if anyone else had similar grievances. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, there were dozens of replies from people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Everything from unfair fines to delayed approvals for essential repairs. It felt like we were onto something. Maybe if enough of us banded together, we could actually make a difference. But then, as if on cue, President Bob chimed in on the forum. His response was predictably bureaucratic, citing regulations and procedures and reminding everyone of the importance of community standards. Give me a break. Despite Bob's predictable pushback, the outpouring of support from my neighbors was encouraging. We decided to hold a meeting to discuss our next steps. It was set for the upcoming Saturday at my place. I figured if we had to sweat it out, we might as well do it together. Saturday arrived, and so did a surprising number of neighbors. My living room was packed with sweaty, frustrated people, all eager to vent and brainstorm solutions. It was kind of surreal, seeing this community come together over a shared sense of frustration and injustice. We talked about our experiences, shared tips on dealing with the HOA, and discussed possible actions we could take. One suggestion was to attend the next HOA board meeting en masse and present our grievances directly to the board. Another idea was to start a petition demanding more transparency and accountability from the HOA. We even floated the idea of trying to replace some of the board members with people who actually cared about the residents' well-being. As the meeting wrapped up, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could turn this around. But for now, we were still stuck in our sweltering homes, waiting for the HOA to get their act together. In the days that followed, I kept up my relentless barrage of emails and phone calls to the property management. Every time I hit send on another desperate plea for help, I felt a mix of frustration and determination. I knew we had to keep the pressure on if we were ever going to get anywhere. One morning, after yet another sleepless, sweaty night, I decided to pay a visit to the property management office in person. Maybe if they saw the desperation in my eyes, they'd finally take us seriously. I walked in, half expecting to be thrown out for being a nuisance, but to my surprise, the receptionist actually seemed sympathetic. She promised to escalate our case and get back to me by the end of the day. Of course, by the end of the day, there was no call. I wasn't surprised, but I was definitely disappointed. It felt like every step forward was met with 2 steps back. But at least I had my neighbors and our makeshift coalition to keep me going. That evening, as the temperature in the house climbed once again, I sat down with my partner and our poor overheated dogs. We talked about our next moves, trying to stay positive despite the oppressive heat. We'd come this far, and giving up wasn't an option. Days turned into weeks, and the battle with the HOA continued. We kept pushing, kept demanding answers, and kept supporting each other. It was exhausting, both physically and mentally, but knowing we weren't alone made it a little more bearable. Every night I lay in bed, drenched in sweat, dreaming of the day when our new HVAC unit would finally be installed. It was a small thing, really, but in that moment it felt like the key to our survival. And as I drifted off into a restless sleep, I held on to that hope, praying that the next day would bring a breakthrough. So here we are, still waiting, still fighting, still hoping. The HOA may have the upper hand for now, but they've underestimated the power of a community united by a common cause. We'll keep pushing, keep demanding what's rightfully ours, and someday soon we'll have our cool, comfortable home back. And when that day comes, we'll know that we earned it through sheer determination and the support of our amazing neighbors. Which state are you currently in? Your HOA should have prioritized expediting repairs like this, ensuring they are completed within days rather than dragging the process out for over 2 weeks. It seems like they're playing games with power and authority, which is unacceptable. Frankly, I would strongly advise getting legal counsel involved. I have 2 senior dogs, one of whom suffers from heart disease, and I've had to convert our home into a makeshift cold room just so they can breathe comfortably. If the HOA president is trying to exert dominance in this situation, they would quickly realize the gravity of their actions. Oh my God, this situation is incredibly dangerous. It's absolutely critical that you take immediate action by sending formal letters or emails to them, urgently warning them of the gravity of their actions. Clearly communicate that their reckless behavior has directly endangered your family's safety. Stress the severity of the consequences. If anything were to happen to your loved ones, you are fully prepared to pursue them through legal channels for damages. Make it explicitly clear that you are willing to pursue both civil litigation to seek financial compensation and criminal charges to hold them accountable for jeopardizing your family's well-being. It's imperative they understand the serious repercussions of their actions and the legal measures you are prepared to take to ensure your family's safety.
If you like our stories, then please like and subscribe and comment, and remember to hit that bell icon so you never miss out. We have new stories almost every day.
It all began when the new homes appeared in our quiet Florida neighborhood, promising a fresh start and a touch of modern living. Families were thrilled to move into their new homes, ready to make memories and build a community. The developer, Mr. Smith, was known for his business acumen, and everyone trusted that he had our best interests at heart. At first, everything seemed perfect. The houses were beautiful, the lawns were pristine, and the amenities were top-notch. Mr. Smith didn't just stop at building homes. He also established Smith Management, a property management company, to oversee the community. Initially, homeowners were grateful for the seamless transition into their new lives. In Florida, once a certain percentage of homes in a development are sold, the developer is supposed to turn over control of the Homeowners Association to the homeowners. This rule is meant to give residents a say in how their community is managed. However, Mr. Smith had no intention of relinquishing control. He handpicked the initial board members, ensuring they were loyal to him. With his chosen board in place, Mr. Smith locked in Smith Management with a long-term contract, securing their control over the community for the next 20 years. The HOA's lawyer, coincidentally, was also Mr. Smith's lawyer. This meant that every legal avenue was covered to protect Mr. Smith's interests. Homeowners thought they were in control, but they were merely pawns in Mr. Smith's game. The HOA, which should have represented the residents, was just an extension of Mr. Smith's business. Homeowners were essentially renting their homes from the developer who sold them those homes. As time went by, things started to change. The fees that were once reasonable began to climb. Homeowners noticed that their HOA dues were being raised frequently, often without clear explanations. When questioned, the board members, loyal to Mr. Smith, would brush off concerns, citing vague reasons like necessary improvements and unexpected expenses. But the improvements were nowhere to be seen. Common areas began to deteriorate, and maintenance requests went unanswered. It became evident that the money was being funneled elsewhere. Suspicion grew among homeowners, but any attempt to get transparency from the board was met with resistance. One year, out of nowhere, our HOA fees were raised twice. No one understood why. That same year, Mr. Smith purchased a $2 million piece of land and built a $10 million mansion on it. The timing was too coincidental. People whispered about kickbacks and mismanagement, but proving it was another matter entirely. A few determined homeowners tried to dig into the HOA's finances. They discovered that a significant portion of their fees was being funneled into projects managed by Smith Management. Often at inflated prices, it became clear that the board members were benefiting from maintaining the status quo, receiving kickbacks and favors from Mr. Smith. Despite growing frustration, homeowners found themselves trapped. Every attempt to elect new board members failed. Smith Management used their influence and the HOA's legal resources to challenge and overturn election results, often winning on technicalities. The system was rigged, and the homeowners were powerless. As years went by, the community's spirit dwindled. People started to sell their homes and move away. But selling was tough because word had gotten out about the HOA's issues. Property values began to drop. New buyers were hesitant, and those who did buy were quickly disillusioned by the high fees and poor management. The once thriving community became a shadow of its former self. Common areas were neglected, and the sense of camaraderie vanished. Homeowners felt isolated and helpless. Every dollar they paid seemed to disappear into a black hole, with no improvements or transparency in sight. Desperate, a group of homeowners decided to take legal action. They pooled their resources and hired a lawyer with no ties to Mr. Smith. They hoped to uncover the corruption and free their community from Smith Management's grip. The legal battle was long and draining. Mr. Smith's lawyer fought tooth and nail to dismiss the case, using every trick in the book to delay and complicate proceedings. After years of fighting, the court finally dismissed the homeowner's case due to insufficient evidence. The legal fees had drained their savings, and their hopes were shattered. Smith Management tightened its grip even further, increasing fees and cutting back on services. The homeowners were stuck in a nightmare. Their beautiful homes had become prisons, and their community, once full of life and hope, was now a place of despair. Mr. Smith continued to profit, his mansion standing as a stark reminder of their failed efforts. In the end, we learned a harsh lesson. Sometimes, the system is so rigged that no amount of determination or unity can overcome it. Mr. Smith had played his cards perfectly, and we were left to pick up the pieces of our broken community. The dream we once had of a perfect neighborhood had turned into a never-ending nightmare with no escape in sight. Well, the worst part is it only takes one person to make everyone miserable. Most people really don't want to control other people or whatever, but then some Karen gets on the board because nobody else really wants to do it, and now you hate where you live. I rented in an HOA once, and the lady next door was that person. I'm 100% convinced this woman was entering my home while I was at work, absolutely not legal. Stuff would be moved around, I'd find personal items out in suspicious places. Many moons ago, my newlywed parents were renting a flat. Mum lost her keys, so Dad, being a practical bloke, changed the lock in the security door. Scroll forward 18 months, my parents have given 60 days notice that they will be moving out. Dad gets a call at work. Have you changed the locks or something? We can't get in to show some prospective tenants the flat, Dad. Yes, my wife lost her keys, so I changed the locks, real estate agent. Well, you should have given us a copy of the new keys, Dad, and you're legally obliged to give us 48 hours written notice. And back in the 1970s, text messages didn't exist, unless it's an emergency. Given your actions so far, I won't be giving you a copy of the keys. You can wait another 3 weeks before showing the flat. As my parents had bought a house, they had no fear of a negative report from the agent because they weren't planning to ever rent again. And so far, they never have. Dad changed the lock back to the original when they moved out and kept the replacement lock and keys. I forget whose house it ended up being fitted to. The first HOA community my family lived in was in Florida. I knew we were in for it when I saw a group of geriatric HOA people driving around and literally measuring people's grass with a ruler. I don't mean casually measuring or eyeballing. I mean the dude was down in his knees checking to see if it was just over the hash mark that would make them in violation. 3 weeks later, the HOA decided that a bunch of large bushes the previous owner had planted on our property were not on the approved list despite signing off on everything during the sale, and threatened to fine us if we did not immediately remove them. It's a shame because they were absolutely beautiful, and also provided a lot of cover from the street for our home. I'll never live in a HOA again if I can avoid it. I still remember the day I got kicked off the council like it was yesterday. It was a typical Homeowners Association meeting, with the usual bunch of owners gathered in the community room discussing the latest proposals and bylaws. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the beige walls and the rows of metal folding chairs. There was a familiar mix of anticipation and impatience in the air, as people murmured among themselves, clutching their printed agendas and styrofoam cups of coffee. What I didn't know was that meeting would be my last as a council member. The main topic of discussion that day was a proposed bylaw that would prohibit owners from replacing their washing machines with new units once they broke down. When the proposal was first read aloud, I could feel my eyebrows shoot up in surprise. I mean, who doesn't want to upgrade to a newer, safer, and more energy-efficient washing machine? It seemed like a no-brainer to me. I looked around, expecting to see others shaking their heads in disbelief, but most seemed indifferent, probably not grasping the full impact of what was being proposed. As the meeting progressed, I listened carefully to the arguments being made. Some members were concerned about potential water damage from improperly installed machines and the strain on our community's aging plumbing system. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that these concerns were valid. However, the solution seemed too draconian. A complete ban on new machines, it was excessive. I decided to voice my concerns. I understand the issues with water damage and plumbing, I began, leaning forward in my seat, but prohibiting new washing machines altogether isn't the answer. We need a balanced approach that addresses these concerns without imposing unnecessary restrictions on homeowners. There was a moment of silence, and I could feel the eyes of the other council members on me. Bob, the council president, cleared his throat. We appreciate your input, but the bylaw is designed to prevent future issues. If we make exceptions, we're just inviting problems. I wasn't ready to back down. What if we required professional installation and regular inspections instead? That way we can ensure safety without limiting people's choices. The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before being quickly dismissed. If the bylaw doesn't pass, we'll just try again next time with a revised version, Bob said curtly. I could sense his impatience, and it frustrated me. They were brushing me off without giving my ideas a fair consideration. Feeling the need to take matters into my own hands, I reached out to several homeowners outside the council meetings. I knew a few who shared my concerns and asked if they would be willing to give me their proxy votes for the upcoming vote. It was a risky move, but I believed strongly in what I was doing. On the day of the vote, I stood up and made what I thought was a compelling argument. I talked about the importance of balancing safety with homeowners' rights and presented a list of alternative solutions, including professional installation and regular maintenance checks. To my surprise, my argument struck a chord with many of the homeowners. When the votes were tallied, the proposed bylaw was defeated. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was tinged with a sense of foreboding. The other council members looked less than pleased, their faces a mix of frustration and irritation. I didn't dwell on it too much. We had a new council election coming up, and I was confident in my chances. I had always been a dedicated and hard-working council member, often going above and beyond to ensure things ran smoothly. Surely, the homeowners would recognize that. But when the votes were counted, I was shocked. I was the least voted person. Even two people who hadn't bothered to show up received more votes than I did. It felt like a punch to the gut. As I looked around the room, realization dawned on me. None of the current council members had voted for me. They had all ganged up against me, likely in retaliation for challenging their proposal. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, disappointment, and frustration. It was hard not to take it personally. After all, I had only tried to do what was best for the community. The sense of betrayal was palpable. However, as I reflected on the experience, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I had stood up for what I believed in, even when it was unpopular. I had provided a balanced and reasonable voice in the room, something that was sorely needed. And as I walked out of the meeting room, I couldn't help but think that the council would soon realize how much they needed me. Without me, who would keep the council on track? I was the one who sent out reminders, pushed for timely decisions, and ensured that our meetings were productive. Without my input, things would likely slow down, and the owners would start to notice. So while getting kicked off the council was a setback, I wasn't bitter about it. In fact, I was proud of what I had accomplished and the stance I had taken. And I hoped that my experience would inspire others in the community to take an active role in our HOA. After all, as they say, that's democracy. In the following weeks, I kept a low profile, attending meetings as a regular homeowner rather than a council member. It was strange to sit in the audience, watching the new council grapple with the issues I had once handled. They struggled with the same old problems: parking regulations, maintenance schedules, and noise complaints. But without the cohesion and efficiency we had achieved during my tenure, one particular incident stood out. There was a dispute about a resident's request to install solar panels. The new council was divided, with some members worried about the aesthetic impact and others concerned about setting a precedent. The debate dragged on with no clear resolution in sight. I could see the frustration building among the homeowners. Finally, unable to contain myself, I raised my hand to speak. "Why don't we conduct a survey to gauge the community's opinion on solar panels?" I suggested. "That way, we can make a decision based on the majority's preference." The council members exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by the simplicity of the solution. After a moment, they agreed to my proposal, and a survey was distributed. The results were overwhelmingly in favor of allowing solar panels, and the matter was resolved without further conflict. Despite my demotion, it felt good to contribute positively to the community. It reminded me that you don't need a title to make a difference. And slowly, I noticed a shift in how the council members interacted with me. They began to see me less as a threat and more as a valuable resource. They started seeking my advice on various issues, and I was happy to help. The most significant moment came a few months later, during the annual HOA meeting. There was a heated discussion about a proposed increase in monthly fees to cover the cost of necessary repairs and upgrades. Many residents were opposed, worried about the financial burden. I stood up and addressed the room. "I understand everyone's concerns about the fee increase," I said, "but we need to consider the long-term benefits. The repairs are essential to maintain our property values and ensure our community remains a desirable place to live. Perhaps we can explore phased increases or other funding options to ease the burden." My words seemed to resonate with the crowd. There was a noticeable shift in the room's atmosphere as people began to discuss the proposal more openly and constructively. In the end, a compromise was reached. A smaller, phased increase that would still address the critical repairs without overwhelming the residents. As I left the meeting, several homeowners approached me to express their appreciation for my input. It was a heartwarming reminder that my efforts were valued, even if I wasn't on the council anymore. Looking back, getting kicked off the council was a blessing in disguise. It allowed me to see the impact I could have without a formal position. It taught me the importance of resilience, the value of standing up for what you believe in, and the power of community engagement. And who knows, maybe one day I'll run for the council again. But for now, I'm content knowing that I've made a positive difference in my community, and that to me is what truly matters. The sheer audacity of those who would attempt to restrict individuals from upgrading their washing machines is truly mind-boggling. It's a recipe for disaster, a ticking time bomb waiting to unleash a torrent of water damage upon unsuspecting homeowners. By forcing people to cling to their outdated, rickety appliances, these individuals are essentially guaranteeing a future of flooded laundry rooms, ruined flooring, and costly repairs. And what's the logic behind this misguided crusade? Is it a desire to preserve some nostalgic notion of the good old days when appliances were built to last, but also happened to be energy inefficient and prone to breakdowns? Or is it a cynical ploy to line the pockets of repairmen and insurance companies, who will inevitably reap the financial benefits of these preventable disasters? Newsflash: insurance is meant to provide a safety net for unforeseen circumstances, not to serve as a crutch for those who refuse to adapt to changing technology and environmental concerns. And as for washer pans, they're a necessary precaution, not a substitute for responsible appliance maintenance. It's high time we recognized the importance of upgrading our washing machines to modern, energy-efficient models that not only reduce our carbon footprint, but also minimize the risk of catastrophic failures. By doing so, we can avoid the financial and environmental costs associated with water damage, and instead enjoy the peace of mind that comes with knowing our homes are protected from such preventable disasters. God forbid people replace crappy machines with new ones that are energy efficient, use less water, and generally are better for the environment. It's almost as if some individuals would rather cling to their outdated, polluting appliances than make a simple upgrade that would benefit not only themselves, but the planet as a whole. I mean, what's the harm in swapping out that ancient, energy-guzzling refrigerator for a sleek, eco-friendly model that will save them money on their utility bills and reduce their carbon footprint? Or, heaven forbid, replacing that water-wasting washing machine with a high-efficiency one that uses significantly less H2O. It's not like these new machines are going to break the bank or require some sort of drastic lifestyle change. And yet there are still people out there who would rather stick with their old, environmentally unfriendly appliances, simply because they're comfortable with the status quo. It's a mindset that's not only harming the environment, but also holding us back from making progress towards a more sustainable future.
Frustration is still coursing through my veins as I struggle to put my feelings into words. Today, I received an unpleasant surprise in the mail from our Homeowners Association management company. Thanks to the post office's informed delivery emails, I had a heads up that something was coming. When I logged into the portal to investigate, my anxiety spiked. The letter claimed that we had committed a parking violation on the 21st at 6 a.m., stating that we were double parked. It's absolutely infuriating. The letter stated that double parking is not allowed, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we got blamed for someone else's mistake. There's definitely bad blood between us and the management company goon, so I wouldn't put it past them to try to pin something on us. But then I looked at the camera footage for that date and time, and guess what? There were no vehicles double parked in any of the spaces. Not a single one. The bottom of the notice reads, Section 4.1.12. No trailers, boats, mobile homes, camping trailers may be parked on the property for more than 24 hours. PRK, Rules and Regulations, Parking. I'm thinking, what does this have to do with anything? We do have a work trailer that's stored elsewhere, and it does get brought to our place to fill up the water tank, which we pay for, by the way. It's usually here for about 20 minutes on weekday mornings around 8 a.m., parked at the back of our garage, not in any parking space. And it doesn't block anyone or anything. But on that particular day, the work trailer wasn't even here. I hate that we have to defend ourselves against something we didn't do. Again, this isn't the first time they've tried to pin something on us. Just recently, they tagged one of our vehicles, claiming it was being stored and not being moved. I had to send them camera footage of the car being gone just the night before it got tagged, and then again being gone later that same day. Both times, the space was vacant for the entire time. It's like they're just looking for ways to harass us. I wish we could afford to move out of this townhouse community. It's not like we're causing any trouble or disturbing the peace. We're just trying to live our lives, but the HOA management company seems to have it out for us. I edited my initial rant to add an update. I received the notice, and it shows a photo of my family member's car looking like it's parked in the center of two spaces. But here's the thing, the camera in front shows the car is basically on the line, not over it, and there's still space for another vehicle in the other space. I took a screenshot of the photo, and then another screenshot of a large truck parked in the second space next to the car. The HOA photo was taken from an angle in the grass behind the car, not in front of it, which forced the perspective to make it look like the car was parked in the middle of two spaces. It's clear they're trying to manipulate the situation. This is the same car they tried to say was being stored before. I think they're just looking for a reason to tow it. It's ridiculous. We're not causing any problems, and yet they're constantly nitpicking and trying to find ways to fine us or tow our vehicles. It's exhausting. I'm still upset about this whole situation. I don't know what their problem is, but I wish they would just leave us alone. We're not bothering anyone. We're just trying to live our lives and enjoy our home. But the HOA management company seems determined to make our lives miserable. The whole issue started months ago when we first moved into this community. At first, everything seemed perfect. Nice neighborhood, friendly neighbors, and a quiet atmosphere. However, it didn't take long for the HOA management company to show its true colors. The first sign of trouble was a notice about our garden. We had planted a few flowers and a small vegetable patch in our backyard. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a little bit of greenery to brighten up the place and give us some fresh produce. But the HOA had a problem with it. According to them, our garden violated some obscure rule about uniformity and landscaping. I remember the day I got that notice. I had come home from work, looking forward to a relaxing evening, only to find the dreaded letter in the mailbox. My heart sank as I read through it. It felt like a personal attack. They wanted us to remove our garden or face a hefty fine. I was livid. How could a few plants cause so much trouble? I spent the evening drafting an email, attaching photos of the garden, and arguing our case. It felt like I was pleading for our right to grow tomatoes and flowers. It was utterly ridiculous. To my surprise, they responded quickly, but not in the way I had hoped. They doubled down, insisting that the garden had to go. That was our first real taste of the HOA's iron fist. Since then, it's been a never-ending battle. The parking violations are just the latest in a long list of grievances. There was the time they claimed our trash bins were left out too long. We usually bring them in promptly after the garbage truck comes by, but there was one week when I had to leave town for a business trip. My spouse had a particularly hectic week at work, and we missed bringing in the bins for a day. Just one day. The following morning, there was another notice, this time with a fine attached. It felt like they were watching us, waiting for us to slip up. Then there was the saga of the holiday decorations. Every year, we put up a modest display for Christmas, some lights, a wreath on the door, and a few ornaments in the front yard. Nothing too flashy, just enough to spread some holiday cheer. But last year, we got a notice that our decorations were excessive and not in line with community standards. Excessive? Really? Compared to some of the houses that look like they belong in a theme park, ours were downright modest. It was like they had a personal vendetta against us. The parking situation, though, has been the most infuriating. It's not just about the car they claim we were double parking or storing. It's the principle of it all. We follow the rules, we park where we're supposed to, and yet they keep finding reasons to harass us. Each time I get a notice, it feels like a slap in the face. It's as if they're saying, "You're not welcome here." The other residents seem to have no problems. I've talked to a few neighbors about the HOA, and while they have their complaints, none seem to experience the same level of scrutiny we do. It's almost like we're being singled out. I've thought about attending an HOA meeting to address these issues, but honestly, I don't think it would help. From what I've heard, those meetings are a joke. The board members are the same people who send out the notices, and they don't seem interested in hearing any dissenting opinions. One of the worst moments was when they tried to tow our car. I was at work when I got a frantic call from my spouse. They had come home to find a tow truck in front of our house, hooking up our car. Apparently, the HOA had decided our car was abandoned and called the tow company. My spouse had to argue with the driver, showing them proof that the car was registered, insured, and very much in use. The driver finally relented, but we still got a bill for the tow company's call-out fee. Another fight with the HOA ensued, and after days of back and forth, they grudgingly agreed to cover the fee. But the damage was done. The stress and humiliation of that incident still linger. And now, here we are again, facing yet another baseless accusation. I can't even describe the anger and frustration I feel. It's like a dark cloud hanging over us, sapping our energy and joy. Home is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where you can relax and feel safe. But thanks to the HOA, it feels like a battleground. I've spent countless hours documenting everything, taking photos, saving emails, and keeping records of every interaction. It's exhausting and demoralizing. I shouldn't have to live like this, constantly on edge, waiting for the next notice or fine. I've looked into legal options, but that's a whole other can of worms. Lawyers are expensive, and there's no guarantee we'd win. The HOA has deep pockets and a team of attorneys ready to fight any challenge. It's a David versus Goliath situation, and right now, we just don't have the resources to take them on. Some nights, I lie awake, wondering how we ended up in this mess. We chose this community because it seemed like a nice place to raise our family. The houses are well maintained, the schools are good, and it's close to work. But the constant harassment from the HOA is taking a toll on us. We're not troublemakers. We're just a regular family trying to live our lives. But the HOA seems determined to make that impossible. The latest parking notice is just another example of their relentless campaign against us. I can't help but feel that there's something more to this. Maybe it's personal. Maybe one of the board members has a grudge against us for some reason. Or maybe they just get a kick out of exerting their power over the residents. Whatever the reason, it's making our lives miserable. I'm at my wit's end. I've tried reasoning with them, complying with their ridiculous demands, and documenting everything to prove our innocence. But nothing seems to work. The notices keep coming, the fines keep piling up, and the stress keeps growing. It's affecting our health, our happiness, and our sense of security. I just want to live in peace, to enjoy our home without constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what the HOA will come after us for next. Is that too much to ask? Apparently, for our HOA, it is. They're determined to make our lives as difficult as possible, and I don't know how much more we can take. I keep replaying everything in my mind, trying to figure out what we did to deserve this. Did we offend someone on the board? Is this just a case of bureaucratic overreach? Or is it something else entirely? The not knowing is almost worse than the harassment itself. It feels like we're trapped in a Kafkaesque nightmare, where the rules are arbitrary and the enforcers are capricious and vindictive. I've thought about organizing the other residents, seeing if we can band together to challenge the HOA. But that seems like a long shot. Most of our neighbors seem content to stay out of it, not wanting to risk drawing the HOA's ire. I can't say I blame them. The few times I've mentioned our issues, people have listened sympathetically, but there's always a sense of relief that it's not happening to them. So here I am, pouring my frustrations into this rant, hoping it will help me process everything and maybe find some clarity. I'm tired of fighting, but I don't see any other option. We can't afford to move, and we shouldn't have to. This is our home, and we have a right to live here without being constantly harassed. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe things will get better, or maybe they'll get worse. All I know is that we can't keep going like this. Something has to give. But for now, all I can do is keep documenting everything, keep pushing back, and hope that someday, somehow, we'll find a way to live in peace. As I sit here, staring at the latest notice, a part of me wants to laugh at the meaninglessness of it all. It's like we're characters in a bad sitcom, dealing with the petty tyrants of the HOA. But there's nothing funny about the stress and anxiety this situation is causing. It's real, and it's wearing us down. I look at my family and feel a pang of guilt. They deserve better than this. We all do. But as long as we're stuck here, we have to find a way to cope. Maybe we'll get lucky, and the HOA will ease up. Maybe we'll find a legal loophole to protect ourselves. Or maybe we'll just have to keep fighting, one notice at a time. For now, all I can do is take a deep breath, hold on to my resolve, and keep pushing forward. We're not going to let the HOA break us. We can't. This is our home, and we're going to fight for it, no matter what. Well, to be honest, you're not going to get anywhere by claiming malicious enforcement for one single notice. What's likely to happen is they're going to think you're a drama queen from now on if you start throwing around harassment and malicious enforcement over one notice. If you have a few notices to back you up, sure. But it'll backfire more than anything else, over just one notice. It'll likely hurt your cause more than help if you jump the gun like this right now. Go to your next meeting and say the following presenting the aforementioned footage. As you can see from the video footage, there was no double parking that occurred at the time stated. If you are going to police and fine residents of this community without properly doing due diligence of investigating alleged rule breaking, then you will have much more to worry about and much more to pay for, as I will have no choice but to take you to court to libel against myself. Please keep in mind that any money used to attempt to prosecute and collect fines on alleged breaking of the rules without proof will be coming directly from you or the board members personally and not the HOA members. You individually or the board members collectively, will be sued for false accusations of the rules broken by me if you continue this. I was preparing to sell my house and I received a violation notice stating that the numbers on my mailbox were illegible. In fairness, the numbers were faded, but they were still legible. I fired off an email asking where mailbox numbers were regulated by the bylaws. House numbers were controlled, but not on the mailbox specifically. Numerous back and forth emails where I backed them into a corner and I discovered they didn't follow proper procedure. The board had to record a vote on the violation and I knew they didn't, so I requested meeting minutes and requested a hearing in front of the board. I went to this extreme because the rules they were citing were newly passed, but I opposed them because they were ambiguous, conflicting and unclear, and I provided suggested edits that they rejected, so I figured I may as well show them their rules were crap. That, and I was days away from closing on the sale, so I didn't want to be bothered with replacing the numbers of the mailbox. They canceled the hearing 3 hours before the scheduled meeting. I closed on the sale the following day. The mailbox and numbers remained the same 5 years later.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.